Hello, this is Mayor Raz J. Baraka, and thank you for tuning in to Edutalk, where we will discuss incredible topics centered around our young people, about local control, community schools, our special needs population, creating curriculum and opportunities for young people to move forward from elementary school into careers or to universities. It is the opportunity for us to discuss our young people's creativity, their imagination, their ability to move our city forward. We need them in Newark, and we need the best educated, the most well-trained, incredibly courageous and imaginative young people coming out of our school system. And this show gives us an opportunity to engage those topics. Again, thank you for watching. God bless.
Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome to Edutalk. My name is Antoinette Richardson, and I'm the Chief Education Officer for Mayor Baraka's Office of Comprehensive Community Education. Today, we have with us our mayor, Mayor Baraka. We also have with us Kalina Berryman, who is now the new acting director of Abbott Leadership Institute at Rutgers University, Newark, and we have with us who has also participated in previous shows, Robert Gregory, Deputy Superintendent of the Newark Public Schools, and that's getting ready to change pretty soon, and we're going to talk about that as part of our program today. You know, we always do a fun fact, so we're going to throw our fun fact out early, and maybe as you're watching, you'll have time to do a little research and see what the answer is. Or if you're an old-timer, like me, and like maybe some other folks here, you might know the answer. So the fun fact is, the question is, how long has Newark had an elected school board? Okay, we're going to get back to that later on. No, Mr. Gregory, you can't yell out the answer, Mayor. And Kalina, you might know it too. Okay, but we're going to give the folks who are watching the show the opportunity to see if they can find what that answer is. So today we're going to talk, we've talked before about the transition to local control for the Newark Public Schools, but you know, this thing is really moving, it's moving rapidly as we knew that it would. So now, the transition plan for full local control of the Newark Public Schools calls for the selection of a new superintendent by July 1st, 2018. But for now, what we're going to do today, we're not going to look that far in the future. We're really going to focus on now and what we can do, because we're not going to wait until July to think about our schools. We're not going to pause and say, okay, in July there's a new superintendent. So what can we do now? What should we be thinking about now in the next like 4 to 6 months? What can be accomplished during the current school year? So Mayor Baraka, there's so many education-related issues going on. I mean, we could pull 100 out of the hat if we just started, if we decided to just name issues. But can you talk about one focus or one improvement that might realistically be made over the next like 4 to 6 months?
Well, I think we should definitely focus on school attendance. I think research says that as long as kids are in a school environment, structured environment, their life outcomes are always better, even if the school is not that great. So we have to make sure that kids are in school, and I think we could do a lot by bringing everybody together to focus on that goal, to make sure the attendance is greater than it is now, obviously, and begin to kind of focus a lot on the academic outcomes, what we're actually providing for kids in schools, like the kind of schools, community school model, for example, and how we begin to expand that and get more of the larger community involved in that. I think that is a goal that we can reach, that we can make. Those two things are easy. I wouldn't say easy, but they're more able to be accomplished, I should say.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that, you know, what you're saying really just kind of aligns with, I think, what folks are working on in the community who are really involved in education. We're focused on education. We're focused on what's actually going on in the classroom And these are things that aren't just something that you do at one time or another, but they're things you do all the time. And this is a perfect time for that. So, Kalina, may I call you Kalina?
Of course.
Okay. So, at ALI, you work very closely with students and with parents. So, can you talk about like one pressing area or priority issue that you hear a lot from students or parents or both?
Well, first of all, to be talking about the return of local control with three of the most amazing educators Newark has ever had is an honor. And I salute the three of you for always acting like we had control, even if we didn't. But I would say, you know, for 20 years, over 20 years, parents and students have not had control over their schools. And so that is a very disempowering experience. But Newarkers are resilient. Like, we don't play that. So even though we had countless superintendents and reforms and different initiatives, Newarkers, parents and students still continue to advocate, to organize, to advance their ideas and their vision. So I think at this point, the issue is that they just want to be heard. And not just heard, but they want to be sure that they will be a part of this process, because we finally have control to make decisions, and they want to make sure that whoever's in leadership really feels accountable to them. So I think within the next 6 months, what we could do is put some systemic mechanisms in place for that to happen, which we really don't have right now. And that's why parents and students are kind of like, well, you know, we're going to have control, but what does that mean? Will the power be felt amongst the people? So I think that what we could do is assess our PTAs to make sure that we have one in every school and that they are fully functioning. Assess our student government organizations, making sure we have one in every school and that they're functioning and trained. At the district level, we can create a parent board and a student board so that we have a systemic mechanism for ongoing engagement. So in 6 months, that would be, you know, what I would think we should focus on.
So, Kalina, I wasn't planning on saying this, but I do have to say, you know, you talk about, you know, the people that you're here on this panel with and everything, but you are of our ranks. You are here. You
Yes.
are such a leader.
Thank you.
Such a leader in
Thank
this
you.
city. And is this your, I'm not going to take up too much time for this, is this your first kind of like public speaking in your new position? Or,
In the new position, yes, because it started on Monday.
Okay,
So,
wow. So congratulations.
so yes. So
yes,
thank you.
Yes, we
Thank
look
you.
forward to your leadership. I know you are replacing Junius Williams, who's done just such an outstanding job
Yes.
over the years. But you know, here you are, you know, the new generation, and we hear you, and thank you. You know, let me say that.
Thank you.
Okay, so Superintendent Gregory, now you've heard comments by the mayor, comments and suggestions. You've heard from Kalina, and so now. You have to be the heavy here because as of February 1st, based on a public vote of the school board in December, you will become officially the interim superintendent. So that's pretty heavy.
Yes.
Okay, so based on what you've heard, and I'm not even asking you here now for your own ideas because I know you have a lot, but based on what you've heard here from the mayor, from Kalina, what sounds kind of doable to you?
Well, alignment is number one, alignment in thinking. So I appreciate both comments because one of the most important attributes of any leader is the ability to listen, to empower people, to allow them to understand that their voices not only will be heard, but will be incorporated in plans for the future. And so one of the things that we are working on right now, to Ms. Berryman's point, is a systemic way to do community outreach to varied stakeholder groups, most importantly our parents, our grandparents, our students, the business industries, the civic industries, the health industries, all that makes up of a city. To engage them in one, understanding what are our challenges going ahead, what are some systemic practices and solutions we have begun to put in place based on what the data is informing us, and then how can in fact we incorporate the ideas, the genius, the brilliance of our community in those plans. That is, if there's ever a priority of mine, if there is ever a goal, it is to reestablish trust, to ensure that people understand this isn't about one person or one system, if you will, the school system. This is about us coming together because Newark's future is really contingent upon what occurs in our school buildings. The mayor has done some amazing work in leading the revitalization efforts in the city of Newark. Now we all have to come together to make this a reality for our students. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate the genius of people in this city. Now it's about putting together that collective wisdom to plow forward and plan ahead.
Thank you. And I think, making everyone feel comfortable is kind of what I'm hearing today, that everyone has to feel comfortable.
Yep.
Not just that they'll be heard, but that their voice has some weight to it.
Exactly right. And will be incorporated in plans for the future.
Exactly.
That's the key.
Exactly.
When people start seeing that what I say, I see,
Oh, yeah, definitely.
it's empowerment.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And we're looking forward to whatever happens after February 1st, and everyone is, those who wish to, being a part of it. And
Langston Hughes' birthday, the start of African American History Month.
all right.
It's a lot of symbolism in there.
Absolutely. There sure is. There sure is. So in considering what is needed to sustain local control of the Newark Public Schools and to improve education for Newark's children, I often talk about the need to transition into more productive relationships. We don't have to go back over the history of, all of the fighting and all of the necessary fighting that we've had to do over the last period. But the question is, how do each of you envision working with community to help us learn to share responsibility for the education of our children? And so, Kalina, if you could start, because I think that's really kind of, your forte here. Not that, the mayor does it, Robert does it, but this is your forte. So I'm going to give you that one first.
I think, there's two things. One thing is we have to learn to trust each other, and we're going to have to earn each other's trust. Trust is just a big problem in this city. We work together, but we don't trust each other. So I'm not sure how to fix that problem completely, but I think that if we look at all of the wisdom that we have in the city and all of the assets, and we think about what should each particular unit be doing, or what should each person be doing, and we put them in their place, that should help with trust. Because I think sometimes, when we're making decisions about things, we don't reach out to the people who are the best people to be at the table. So if we start to do that and really think about, okay, who should be here, regardless of our personal relationship with them, who should be here for an authentic conversation? And then on the community side, we got to learn to trust somebody to represent us. Because I know everybody wants to feel like their voice is heard. And if you let the person that you trust represent your voice at the table, it will be heard. But we have a tendency to kind of say, because I wasn't there, my voice wasn't represented. No, your voice was represented because somebody you trust in and love and appreciate and respect was there. And they're always going to speak for you. And on our side, we have to communicate better when we represent them at that table and let them know that we're going and here's what it's going to be about and maybe what do you want me to say. So, it's a communication thing, it's a trust thing, but I hope with the return of local control we can get there.
Keep bringing the wisdom. You are such a key player. I don't know what else to say. And Mayor Baraka, this is also your forte. I think that one thing that you are known for and you do so well is communicating with grassroots people, listening really well to people, and listening so well to people that sometimes you can't get away from the people to go do something else you have to do. Okay, so, but I don't mean that in a negative sense. So what do you envision that we could do to help learn to share this responsibility?
Well, I'm glad you're using shared responsibility because that's important. I don't think people have looked at it that way. Look at it, people take total and complete ownership of the stuff on their own, like it's theirs personally, as opposed to ours collectively. And when we begin to view the institutions that way, we respect other people's, not just their opinion, but their input and their accountability to what needs to take place, because all of us are going to be held accountable for outcomes in one way or another. So everybody needs to have an opportunity to redress some of the things that are going on. Anything that we do in the city that has been successful has been around collaboration. Yeah. All of the things that have been not so well have been done individually, right? And that's very clear to me. So I think in order for us to move the school system forward, there's no reason for us not to have the education sector, the higher ed community involved in it, the private sector, the philanthropic community, city government needs to be involved in it, community organizations. Everybody has to be involved, like in any other community, in the development of the young people of the city, and we can't exclude people from that conversation.
That's right.
Everybody has to, whether you like what they're saying or not.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
That's
Yep.
the truth.
That's right. Sometimes
And-
if you listen, you find that maybe you didn't object to so much to what they
Yeah.
were saying.
That's true.
Maybe you didn't like how they said it, but if
Right.
you listen to what they're saying,
They
you're like,
might be
okay,
right.
they're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Robert,
our
yeah.
heads can't continue to nod enough, right? So humility is something I think is also important. And when I say that, from a school district's perspective, we don't have all the answers, and we, I feel for the first time, have begun to acknowledge that, have begun to acknowledge the fact that this is a intertangled ecological system, that if we continue to work in silos, we will never be able to break things like intergenerational poverty, stagnant educational outcomes. And so it is about a comprehensive, collaborative approach to the work. It's not about superheroes, it's about hosts and people who can convene others, people who know the right stakeholders to involve, but also are willing to go above and beyond what they think they know as the right stakeholders to involve. So one of the things I've benefited from throughout my entire career is really listening to students, listening to parents, and trying to make sure I'm incorporating what they are saying in any plans of action. Now on the broader scale, it's about, as the mayor indicated, involving the higher ed community, the philanthropic community, and also being humble but willing to be disturbed and critical of one another's work to see if the things we are doing are actually leading to the change that people want to see.
Very important. Very important.
Yep.
Because we've had change, and it has not necessarily been the change that we wanted to see. I know some people say change is always good.
Yep.
Change is not always good.
Yep.
So we are looking for the changes that are good for us, good for our community.
That's right.
So thank you for that. So on February 1st, as I said earlier, the 9 members of the Newark Board of Education assume legal control over the Newark Public Schools. And for the sake of clarity, because some people really don't understand this, that means the schools that come under the authority of the Newark Public Schools District. That does not include the charter schools, that does not include the parochial or other private schools in this city, although obviously we care about the education of every child in this city. The school board has the legal jurisdiction over those schools in the Newark Public Schools District. So this phenomenon is very important. A lot of people are thinking about it. So what are your expectations of school board members now and in the future? The school board members who may be sitting now, as well as those who are interested in and who become new school board members. So this is not what do you expect of this one person or another, but what do we expect of school board members as we move into this new era where school board members will actually have the same control that school board members have in every other state in New Jersey. Mayor Baraka?
Well, I think, one, they need to inform the community of what's happening. I don't think that happens enough. Like, even with snow situation, like people will say, "Oh, Mayor, why don't you close the schools?" Like, so people don't understand that I can't close the schools. But you know, it's important for them to make sure the community knows the relationship between the school district and the city, what the school board is, that they're not running the school system, right? That they have professionals that do that, and they shouldn't attempt to do that either. Right? Their job is to oversee, to provide information to the community, to make sure things are happening in a way that's responsible, correct, lawful. All of those things, you know, to be the fiduciary in some aspects for the community, for the information, and that's important for them to understand that. And they represent, as Kalina said, they represent thousands of Newarkers on that board. They're supposed to be the voice of those people and collectively, not get caught up and little special interests, but a collective understanding of how they're supposed to represent the best interests of the students and families of this district.
I mean, that's very important. And it's very difficult because a lot of school board members basically come out of a background of having been community activists. And, you know, I know, you know, as, you know, having been on the school board for a number of years, been a school board president, it's very difficult. But you do have to make that distinction, being the community advocate and, you know, action person, and what your role is, because the role of a school board member is specific and it's extremely important. So, okay, Kalina on that?
So I mean, you know, as a employee of ALI, but also as a graduate of ALI at Rutgers Newark, number one is I want anybody who leads anything that has to do with education to understand education policy, to understand how schools work, to understand how to advocate and organize. So that's like number one for me. But number two, and I feel that we all should agree as a city on this, is that you have to be unapologetically about the business of Newark Public Schools. And one of the things that bothers me is when I hear people who are employed or elected to lead this district to say, I don't care where kids go as long as everybody gets educated. That's not your job. Your job is to care that parents want to keep their kids in Newark Public Schools. And if we all do that, if Newark Public Schools folks are all about Newark Public Schools and whoever else is all about their entity, all kids will go to amazing schools. But we need leaders who are unapologetically about NPS, who dedicate their time to really figuring out how to make sure that Newark Public Schools are schools that parents choose for their children, that are schools that parents want to be in, and are schools that are creating the best young people possible. And I want it to be so they can't hardly sleep at night until they figure it out. So those are my two biggest qualifications for board members.
Thank you.
Now and in the future.
Thank you. Makes sense. Thank you.
Sense.
Thank you.
And superintendent.
Yeah,
And the superintendent.
yes,
Makes
absolutely.
sense, right?
Yes, and it doesn't, and again, that doesn't mean that anyone does not care about the education of all children. But I mean, and I've explained this, and you know, I do get some pushback on it, but I look at what is your legal responsibility as a board member. Doesn't mean that you don't care about others. It doesn't mean that you don't work with other people on things. It just means to understand your, you know, legal fiduciary responsibility.
Right.
Okay, so Robert.
Yes.
At the December 19th Board of Education meeting, and saying this again, you were selected by, I believe it was a unanimous vote of the board, okay, to serve as the interim superintendent of schools, which will go into effect on the 1st of February, as we have said. So, and I know it has been a very short period of time, and that February 1st date has not hit yet, but has your perspective changed at all on what is needed to move the district forward? Sitting, you know, moving into a different role, having to have a broader, even broader scope of vision than you have had to have as a deputy superintendent. What have you learned so far, and what is your vision?
Collaboration is key. Communication is also of extreme importance. As I indicated, being humble, not trying to have all of the answers, but making sure you are setting up the right systemic opportunities for people to have input on plans that are moving forward, making sure that you are strategically using data to see if what you are doing is actually working. Behind all of those numbers are human beings and their lives. And if we want to solve human problems, we have to empower other humans and work together to solve our own problems. We get in our own way a lot as human beings. If we look at from a historical perspective, the history of civilizations, there was things like biological poverty that was unavoidable. Now there's we know how to avoid poverty. We have enough information out there. We know what research-based practices work. And so if we want to destroy political poverty, we got to come together as a people to do that.
Can I interrupt you? Because I just thought, you know, we talk about, you know, using data and all this stuff. And I think sometimes for parents, that sounds like a bunch of whatever, like, so what? Like, I know what my child needs. I don't need anybody to go do some surveys and all of that stuff. I could just tell you. So, I mean, just so, of if you could just maybe
Yeah,
hone in, like of what importance
Sure.
is this data,
Yep.
and where does that opinion of the parent,
Yep.
how does that play into the data? Is it a
Exactly
part
right.
of it, or are those two separate things?
Well, let's take something the mayor led with, absenteeism, right? It's not something that, when you look at chronic absenteeism, is simply explained. There are all of these factors that lead to it. And if in fact we want to begin to change it, because it's something we can change immediately, really, we have to, one, have timely interventions. We can't wait until a child is absent for 4 days or misses, 4 days in a given month to try to do something about it. The second that child is absent, what is the school going to do? What are people in the city going to do? One of the things that I thought was an amazing effort was the Safe Corridor Initiative in the South Ward Community Schools. Why was it important? Well, we know some kids don't travel to school on certain days because they don't feel safe. We've experienced it growing up as Newark residents. At times having to run home from school, if you will, or avoid taking certain
I
blocks.
never ran. Did you ever run?
To get to school. But I did run, right? And I did avoid certain places to go. And our kids confront those things
Yes, they
every
do.
day. They also confront things like, housing issues, health issues. Again, school system can't solve that alone. We know what the data is telling us. We got to unpack it. There's empirical, there's anecdotal data, and we have to bring the collective wisdom and services of this community together to begin to address it.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to pause now and give the answer to that EduFact. And the question was, how long has Newark had an elected school board? Anybody know the answer? Don't say it, don't say it. Anybody know the answer? I know the answer. So most recently, since 1983, after a 1982 referendum is a vote by the public. Okay, so in 1982, people went to the polls and they voted to have an elected school board. Prior to that, the school board had been elected by the mayor. Now that's in recent history. If you dig back longer than that, and you can actually find more information in the history of Newark Public Schools on the NPS website. So there is a history before that of elected and appointed, but 1983. So that means that Newarkers have been electing their school board members for the last 35 years, and that's the answer to our Edutalk question for today. And it's time for us to close. I'd like to give each of you just like, do we have 30 seconds? Can we do it in 30 seconds? Okay, 30 seconds, and Robert, Kalina, and then the mayor for a little closing statement.
Just closing statement, a better tomorrow starts with us today.
Thank you. Kalina?
I want to say that Rutgers University Newark is debt-free for Newarkers who make under $60,000 a year.
That's right.
And
Wonderful.
the Honors Living Learning community has been created to ensure that leaders or young people who have potential to be global leaders and global citizens are cultivated in this city. And we have to make sure that Newark students are not only highly qualified to get accepted, but to complete
Yes.
and to go on and be a part of this revitalization that the mayor has started. So that is what I want to say, because I want to make sure that we begin to see the long-term goal, which is educational excellence for our young people.
Thank you. Mayor Baraka.
Well, I think we're on a precipice here. It's a historical moment for all of us. This is a collective victory if we make something happen out of this. It's an opportunity for all of us in this city to really lift our kids up, to organize our institutions around the well-being of our young people. And we have history is best qualified to reward all research, as was said by Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad. I think it's important that we learn from that, learn from our history, and use this moment as an opportunity to move the city forward.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank each of you for just your vision, insight that you brought to our program today.
Thanks for having us.
You're
for
welcome.
creating it.
Hey, you're welcome. Well, this is done under the auspices of the Office of the Mayor. So, if we didn't have a mayor who was this interested in education, this program would not be happening. So thank you, Mayor Baraka, in particular. So this has been Edutalk. We hope that you enjoyed it. We hope that you learned something. We hope that you tune in again and again. We are aired every Wednesday at 7 o'clock, right before the council meeting, and then again on Sundays at 2:30. So please, thank you for joining us now, and join us again and again for Edutalk. And we're going to be talking about some of everything dealing with education on this show. Thank you.